Well, joining me now from Washington, D.C. is Mary Rice Hasson. She's the director of the Catholic Women's Forum, an organization that aims to amplify the role of women within the church. And in London, we have Jack Valero. He's the founder of Catholic Voices, a project that aims to improve the church's representation in the media. I thank you both for joining us. Jack, let's begin with you. Let's, I guess, forget the spiritual dimension for a moment. Forget infallibility. Let's render unto Caesar, I guess, and look at the Pope just as a head of state, right? And the scale of the scandal and the allegations being made and what has been said and what he's been accused of. Don't you think that's worthy of resignation?
Well, the letter by Archbishop Vigano makes allegations against 32 people, and some of those will have to be followed up. About Pope Francis, he says a very simple thing, that he told him about McCarrick in June 2013, and that Benedict had imposed sanctions of McCarrick, which Francis lifted and put him back into circulation. Well, that has been proven to be false. And that's really the only thing he says about Francis, because there were no sanctions or no public sanctions. McCarrick had a public life throughout the pontificate of Benedict, and really nothing changed when Francis came along. So the questions are not what Francis did or didn't do about McCarrick, but what did John Paul know when he made him an archbishop and a cardinal? What did Benedict know when he didn't act against them? And I have found, looking at this letter that came out 8 days ago, it has been really a distraction. It has made Catholics fight each other when we really should be united to fight the cancer of child abuse.
Okay.
Another question is whether Pope Francis has been effective in fighting child abuse. That's something to be discussed. But really, the Vigano letter has really not helped at all.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Vigano's letter came out while Pope Francis was in Ireland, a country, I guess you could say, wrestling with its Catholicism in many ways, with modernity and with faith. Mary Rice Hasson, should the Pope resign?
I'm not going to speak to whether the Pope should resign or not. The presumption is he's our Holy Father, he's our Pope, but what we do want is answers. And women want answers in particular. And I think in the United States, this issue is not going to go away. So I would disagree respectfully with what Jack had said just now, that it has been established that Pope Benedict did not put public sanctions on then Cardinal McCarrick. What we don't know, what we do know is that there were some kind of sanctions or some sort of restrictions, and that former Cardinal McCarrick felt free to disregard those. But more importantly, the questions that have been put to our Holy Father are questions that he needs to answer, because his flock is anguished. People are anguished and hurt and betrayed here. And the Holy Father has a pastor's heart. He needs to answer these questions directly.
Okay, so Jack, are we seeing Vatican House of Cards at play here, piggybacking on what is a very serious thing?
So.
Child sex abuse, but power politics being at play.
I think child sex abuse is a very important topic. We must tackle it. We must tackle it properly. I just don't think that this letter has helped. We need to investigate the McCarrick affair. The McCarrick affair needs to be investigated in the year 2000 with John Paul, in the year 2004, 2005, 2006 with Benedict. It doesn't need to be investigated now. The problem was before. But more importantly, if you look at the Pennsylvania report, which came out just before and was horrific, this needs to be investigated further, and this needs to be, people who were implicated in these things need to be found,
right,
and punished, and victims need to be recompensed. This is the real work that needs to go on. And of course, anybody who was implicated in this scandal needs to be punished or whatever. But,
right,
but I just think that this particular letter has not helped in this process.
Okay, so Mary Rice Hasson, looking at the politics, Vigano seems to be one of those, I guess, I struggle with the terms here, but more conservative than the Pope, Catholics, who might consider him a little bit too liberal. Vigano has spoken about gays within the church, blames them for child abuse, talks of a homosexual current. There's an idea that there are those who consider that the Pope too liberal, who are using this to try and get rid of the Pope. They were people who kept quiet when there were allegations over Pope Benedict and covering up child sex abuse scandals in Germany and the US and elsewhere. And now suddenly they care about child sex abuse because it's a good opportunity to get rid of Pope Francis. Does that check out?
No, I disagree. And so here's the thing. We don't know. Certainly there were problems under past popes because these problems are long-standing. But when you are the leader, as the Holy Father is the leader, you're the leader today. And these allegations have been made against him personally. And I don't see this as a source of division. There are people from both the right and the left who are calling for the same thing, who are just humbly asking the Holy Father, please tell us. Because the allegation, the most serious allegation to my mind, made by Archbishop Vigano, is that our Holy Father knew about Cardinal McCarrick's past, or former Cardinal McCarrick's past, and yet still allowed him to be the spokesman and to be out front and center and to be advising. And so if that's the case, that we need to hear that from the Holy Father. And we need to hear the apology that goes with that, or the explanation if it's more complex. But what's not acceptable, what is not speaking to the heart of the anguish of Catholics here in the US, it's not speaking to us to say, I won't say a word.
Right.
And so that was particularly hurtful.
Yeah, Jack, why is he keeping his counsel? Why doesn't he give an adequate explanation? Why doesn't he say Vigano's talking nonsense and there's no proof that I knew, here's why? Why not?
Well, I think he's following the same policy as Benedict before him. So he saw that John Paul had done nothing about him, that Benedict had done nothing. He didn't want to throw them under the bus. So he continued. He didn't make any change or re-establish McCarrick at the center. This is false. He just continued the same with whatever was known. As soon as it was known that he had been involved in child abuse, he was punished publicly. The only person who's sanctioned McCarrick is really Francis. It's not Benedict. It's not John Paul. And but really, this is important, of course, and we must have answers. I agree with Mary. But what is really important, more important than that, is to overcome this cancer of child abuse, whether it is some aspect of homosexuality.
But that's true. The Pope himself says it. But Jack, certainly, the Pope himself says that. I mean, in response to the Pennsylvania grand jury report, he said all the right things, didn't he? He said all members of God's people need to help to uproot the culture of abuse. Everyone of the baptized must feel involved in the ecclesial and social change. Exactly. He said that shame and repentance, was necessary, and it was not where it should have been. They didn't act in a timely manner. We showed no care for the little ones. We abandoned them. All of that is what you're saying. He's shown that sense of contrition as a leader. But the point is, someone who's very senior, this is not a small fry, someone who's very senior, who was very close to him, has said that he knew all along. That's what he's not addressing. That's the point.
Right.
But that's not reliable. That is not reliable.
Well, except, Jack, we need to hear that from the Holy Father, because he is the one who knows what Archbishop Vigano said to him. And it's not right to say that the Holy Father changed nothing, because we have the reports even of David Gibson and other reporters who noted that that then Cardinal McCarrick had been, quote, put out to pasture under Pope Benedict, as if he had been sidelined, and that Pope Francis had brought him back and that was using him as a spokesman. And so that brings to light the question of, what did Francis know? And if he made that decision, why did he make that? And so the people here, especially in the United States, I wonder if in Europe the pain and the hurt of people here in the US is being underestimated. People here in the US need to hear the Pope look us in the eye and tell us with that great pastor's heart what we are to understand about what happened and what's going to change and what mistakes were made under him and perhaps by previous popes. But we need to hear that from him, because he is our leader. He is the one we must trust. And it creates a climate of distrust.
Okay, Jack?
No. okay, we need to hear. But he wasn't put out to pasture during Benedict. He was extremely active all over America, and he was feted by Vigano himself, by Benedict. So he was very much at the center of life. To say that he was sidelined and then he was brought back into the center just doesn't fit the facts. So we need to hear. But the scandal of the seminaries, which has come out now, which hadn't come out before, because it hadn't come out into the public, which now has exploded, not just there, but in Boston, in Honduras, in Chile, needs to be tackled, and that will be tackled throughout the church, and that is being looked at. But to say, because the Pope knew something in 2013 and he behaved exactly the same as Benedict, why we're getting distracted with this when he has shown that he wants to solve this problem of child abuse. And of course, this is a new problem that we're finding now with McCarrick, which is the abuse of seminarians. And we need to tackle that. But why are we getting distracted here when really this problem comes from before and we are looking into it and we are requesting all the information all around the world in all the seminaries that went around. And with McCarrick, when it came out, we did ask for the information, and we're waiting for it.
Very finally, Mary, because we're out of time, in less than 30 seconds, please.
No, so here's the thing. This is not something that Pope Francis has had no hand in, because we see also a track record, unfortunately, over the past year and a half of him being skeptical of claims of sexual misconduct on the part of bishops. And so with this direct accusation made by Archbishop Vigano, we need, in order to have confidence in the church going forward, in order to have confidence in his leadership, we need Pope Francis to provide answers. And that's why we wrote that letter. Women want answers, to hear the pain of those who are suffering under this confusion. We need his leadership. We need his answers now.
Okay, lots of questions, very few answers for the moment, and that's why we're having discussions such as this one. Mary Rice Hasson and Jack Valero, I thank you both for joining us here on the Newsmakers.